All right, so on Tuesday, head coach Jim Montgomery was fired from the Boston Bruins due to their lackluster 8-9-3 start to this season. And I wanted to wait a few days. Tonight they play their first game against Utah, but I want to talk about who is really at fault here. Is it Jim Montgomery's fault for the slow start? Is it the players? Is it Don Sweeney? Or is it both? Or is it all three? Who knows? We'll figure it out after this video. But first off, I want to start off with the first 20 games of the Bruins' last 4 seasons, including this past year. So in 21-22, and what's really keen about all of these starts for Boston is they all start off with at least 25 points through the first 20 games of the season, except for 21-22, which is just 24. So Boston in 21-22 was 12-8-0 for 24 points. Yeah, not 25 points, but it's still above a point per game when you're looking in terms of how many games they played, which I think is good per se. Now, again, this was the season where they finished wild card. It was Bruce Cassidy's last season. So it's not Jim Montgomery. The next two are Jim Montgomery. In 2022-23, they were 17-3-0 through the first 20 games of the season. They had 34 points. I think that's a franchise record for their best start ever to start a season. And that was the year where they obviously, had the best record in the NHL. It did not end up mattering because they ended up losing in round 1 anyways. In 2023-24, Boston went 14-3-3 for 31 points. So not as good as the year before, but still pretty damn good. And obviously they went on to finish second seed. They beat Toronto in the playoffs. They ended up losing against Florida again in the second round. But what's very keen about all of these is even though they were a wild card in 21-22, and that's not even Jim Montgomery, they all started off very good. So one of the big factors for Boston was they needed to start off very good. But again, I just wanted to start off with that stat. Really doesn't have anything to do with what we're kind of talking about, but I think that the Bruins having a start shows the fact that, there's not a great chance of them maybe getting into the playoffs. And it also shows the standard in Boston as well and how they've started off really good the past 3 seasons. And this year they start off meh and the coach goes. Makes a lot of sense. So let's move into the players. And we're going to read off a lot of the stats here. I'm going to try and put some blame on Montgomery. Going to try and put some blame on some other guys. But I feel like a lot of the reason why some of these guys are playing slow may not be because of Montgomery. It may just because these guys are having slow starts. Or it's Don Sweeney's fault. First off, David Pastrnak. He has 8 goals, 9 assists for 17 points so far this season. However, he is 4th in giveaways. The most amount of giveaways this season, which is kind of crazy to think. I was looking at some advanced analytics, trying to find some things to talk about here, and I do have a few pieces that we'll bring up throughout this video, but I thought that was interesting. But I don't think Pastrnak is necessarily the biggest problem on this team. Neither is Brad Marchand, even though he's had his struggles this year. He has 5 goals, 8 assists, 13 points. Those are the only 2 players that have more than 10 points this season. Notice how you don't have a single player on this roster going at a point per game. So even though these guys have solid starts so far, I would argue they're struggling. Because usually those 2 players, or at least David Pastrnak, are point per game or more. And they're not this year. I think that plays a big factor as well. Now, you look at guys they brought in the offseason. You look at guys that have been here for a little bit. Everybody seems to just be struggling right now, except for the 4th line. That's the only line that seems to be good right now. That line of Kastelik, Brazeau, and I think it's Beecher have like top 10 in goals for per 60, which is pretty awesome when you're looking in terms of all of the lines in the NHL. So that's crazy, but it's also not a great sign either because it shows all 3 of your other lines are not playing good, are just not playing good. Elias Lindholm was brought in this year on a big contract. He has 2 goals, 7 assists for 9 points this season. That is Don Sweeney's fault. You look at how Lindholm has been through the last few seasons, ever since I would say Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau left Calgary, Elias Lindholm really has not been the same. You look at the numbers, he hasn't. And even in that season where he got traded to Vancouver, Vancouver was even like, yeah, we might trade him too. And that was because they wanted to get a better asset, because maybe they realized Elias Lindholm isn't as great as, he may be projected to be. Sure, he may be a good top 6 center. Doesn't score a lot, though, when you look in terms of the stats. And, 9 points isn't, horrendous and not a horrendous start. But still, you're scoring an average of 0.48 points per game right now. It's not good enough with the money that he gets paid. Justin Brazeau, part of that fourth line. We're going to read off the fourth line here. It's not Beecher, it's Kapik, or Coep. Probably going to say his name wrong all the time. But Brazeau, 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points. I would say that he's looked good. Coep has also looked solid too. I'm probably saying his name wrong. I know. It's one of the guys that I always get wrong. 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points. Those 2 guys are playing well. And then Mark Kastelik too. He has 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. So the fourth line looks awesome. Again, the fourth line looks incredible. And it's funny because one of the biggest problems that has been on Boston for, I would say, the last couple of seasons, whenever I talk about them at the trade deadline or just these regular season videos that I make, the biggest issue I would say is their offensive depth. Well, their offensive depth is playing better than some of their top guys right now. And I think that is wild. Honestly, it is wild. Hampus Lindholm is also on that list too. He has 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. Again, he is a defenseman, but he's probably more of an offensive defenseman. Has just not been good enough. I would argue there's very few players on this team that I would say are living up to expectations right now. Just being dead honest with you guys. So you look at Pavel Zacha, another big guy there. Last season, he absolutely flourished. He was playing on the first line with Pastrnak for most of the season, was their first line center. Maybe it wasn't ideal that he was your first line center, but hey, he was. And he played awesome. This season, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. That's a point, I think, below 0.4 per game, points per game. That's not good enough. It's not. And I'm not saying, and listen, I'm not saying that all of these guys need to score at a point per game pace, but they need to be better than this, at the very least. And again, some of this is on the players for having a slow start. I think there's some of it that goes on Montgomery because he's been given 20 games to kind of figure this out. And, maybe he needs more time to figure out what's going on with some of these players. But that's Joe Sacco's job now as the intern. So it's interesting to look at that. Now, Charlie McAvoy, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points, has been okay. I guess been kind of meh defensively. He hasn't been like the McAvoy that we know and love, I would say. Mason Lohrei, 1 goal, 6 assists, 7 points. Now, one of the interesting things that I want to say, Brandon Carlo is not on my list of guys that I think are disappointing right now, but him and Carlo are the 3rd highest goals against per 60. That tandem is horrendous this year. And Mason Lohrei was one of the players who I really thought was going to take a huge step this year because he looked like a first-pairing defenseman last season and was profiled as one of the Bruins' best prospects. I didn't get to finish my prospect pool reviews this past offseason, but if I did the Bruins, he would have been on that list and probably number 1. He has not been good enough. Neither is Carlo. Trent Frederic, 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points. Needs to be better. Johnny Beecher, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. Has also not been good enough. Again, this is your middle 6. We're talking about guys on their middle 6 right now who have just all struggled. Charlie Coyle, 4 goals, 1 assist, 5 points. Has also struggled, most notably. Other guys who aren't on my graphic, Morgan Geeky's been not that good. Nikita Zadorov doesn't have a goal this season. I think he has 45 penalty minutes. There was a stat, I don't know if it's still true now, but Zadorov had a penalty in almost every single game that the Bruins have played up until, I think, game 15 of the season. Yeah. So that is also not good enough either when you look at the Bruins. They need to be better. Everybody on this roster is accountable right now, I would say, except for that fourth line. Honestly. That's everybody that's accountable right now. And Matthew Poitras, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. He's in the AHL. And this is what else I don't understand. Why not just play the young players? Why not just play Merkulov? Why not bring up Liesel? Why not bring up Poitras? Get them into the lineup. See how they do. Who knows? Maybe they're good. And I get it. There's a high standard in Boston, and they don't want to play young guys and have them, they screw up, and then Bruins end up, sucking and missing the playoffs in the end. But still, you have all these young guys who are playing pretty well in the AHL. I have watched the AHL Bruins a lot, and a lot of them look solid, but you're not playing them. I don't understand. I genuinely don't understand. Now, I get sending Poitras down because, you want to give him more time in Providence and you want to give him more ice time. Give him that here. Who would you say right now is deserving of that first line role right now? Pasternak? I guess. Marchand? Okay. I think Poitras, give him a chance. Listen, I get you want to make the playoffs. I get bringing in Joe Sacco. He's probably going to be the intern. Boston's going to end up winning, the rest of their games this year and make the playoffs. That's how it works. But the team hasn't played good with Montgomery. To be honest, I don't think it's Montgomery's fault. I'm at a loss for words right now because I don't think it's his fault. Yes, I understand why they did it. I understand why it needed to happen. And I said that in my video last week or 2 days ago. And I genuinely think that Montgomery is going to get a job. He is going to get a job in the NHL, may even be this season. I would say the next team to fire their coach, I'm looking at you, Detroit. Maybe them, might not be. It might be another team. But I think the next team that fires their coach, they're going to be calling up Montgomery first. Maybe Quenneville, but I think those two guys are the top candidates right now for a coaching job. And I think Montgomery should be. He has the winningest record ever in Boston, and he had very good regular season numbers, and he didn't have good playoff numbers either. But guess what? Neither did Bruce Cassidy. Bruce Cassidy had, a cup final under his belt? When do things change? I think everybody is looking at Don Sweeney right now. There have been a lot of people who have been looking at Don Sweeney recently, and then the last, I would say, 5 years. But I think the tables have really turned to Sweeney right now, and if this team doesn't make the playoffs, I think his job's done. Seriously, I think this might be it for him in Boston. Now, I haven't even gotten into the goaltending yet. Let's get into the goaltending now because that is a big part in why this team has struggled. And I put it almost entirely on Don Sweeney. Almost entirely on Don Sweeney and Bruins upper management. Seriously. Jeremy Swayman, 5-7-2 this season, 3.47 goals against average, and a .884 save percentage. That's Sweeney's fault. Because he missed training camp. Because you guys had a $2 million dispute over 8 seasons? Listen, you can argue all you want about how, maybe Swayman's not worth this much money and, you can defend your point. I understand that. And part of it's on Swayman, too. Part of it's on Swayman because, come on, just take the money. Just take the money. But to be honest, you had all offseason to discuss this. And I'm sure they were talking about it all offseason. But there were reports that, and again, Sweeney came out and said they aren't true. But there were reports that he wasn't returning Swayman's calls for 3 weeks. And I'm sorry, I know Spin and Chicklets, and Spin Chicklets is a podcast that I listen to it all the time. I love it. But it is a podcast that a lot of the time, some of the stuff they say is downright stupid. But why the hell would Ryan Whitney make that up? Why would Ryan Whitney make that up and say his source is, it's false? Why would he make that up? Whether you believe that or not, it's there. And I think there's a lot of fault on Swayman for making his goalie miss training camp because, again, you need training camp, especially if you're a goalie. If you're a skater, okay, maybe you can miss out a little bit of time and still get better towards the end of the season. For a goalie, you need that. You need training camp. And Swayman missed all of it. You expect Swayman to just come in and be like, oh, yeah, let's go. I'm going to be a Vezina goalie. Makes 0 sense to me whatsoever. 0 cents. Korpisalo's been solid. 3-2-1, 2.74 goals against average, and a .901 save percentage. That's not bad. Those are good numbers, I would say. For how the Bruins have played, for how Korpisalo looked like last year, above a .900, it's pretty solid. Now, again, it's November. Boston can for sure come out of this and, make the playoffs. I'm expecting them to. I would put money on it, to be honest, if I could gamble. I'm still under 18 years old, but I would put money on it. 100% I would. Just because it's Boston. So, a couple more stats here I want to read off before I wrap up this video. Their average shot per game for the first 20 games of the season is 18.75. That is below 20 shots a game they are averaging. That's pretty wild. Pretty wild. Shots against is actually not that bad, though. 21.8 shots against per game. That's pretty solid. So, the biggest issue, and I've said this in my videos with Boston, is that their third periods have also sucked. They've had a few third periods where they've looked okay, but I would say for the majority of this season, their third periods have not been good. They would go third periods without even scoring a shot or scoring very little shots. Better hope Joe Sacco fixes it. Because if not, Don Sweeney's job's on the line. And somebody else is going to come in here and try and figure out what they're going to do. And I am not saying by any means Boston should just tear it down. That is the dumbest thing you could do. It is. It is the dumbest thing you could do. This team, first off, you can't. This team has way too many long-term contracts for them to move off of players. Too many. And the only guys you can really trade, what are you going to get back for them? You're just going to keep David Pastrnak through his entire prime in a rebuild? Sure, you can trade him, but that's wasted potential. That makes Sweeney or whoever does it look bad. So, to wrap up, I think that Boston definitely is going to get better. They are probably going to turn this around and make the playoffs because that's what Boston does. But I think that if there's a very odd chance they don't, or they don't get playoff success this year, or they don't get better in the playoffs, I think Sweeney's job's done. I think he's gone. And I know I've said that a lot of times. I've been making videos for 5 years. I remember a lot of the things that I talked about. I remember a lot of the things that I said. I have definitely said Sweeney should be let go at some point in the 5 years I've been making videos. But we're at the point now where he's been through 2 coaches. More than 2. He's had a chance. This team has made 1 cup final. They've been past the second round once, and that was the cup final year. Where does that end? Seriously. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. That was a good 17-minute video on the Boston Bruins. I didn't think I was going to make a video today. I had a busy day. I thought the podcast was going to be my video for the day, but I made this one. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Comment your thoughts on the Bruins and whether or not you think I'm right. If Sweeney's job is on the line, is it really Montgomery's fault? Is it the players' fault? Is it Swayman? Is it Sweeney? Who is it? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. While you're at it, like the video as well. Consider subscribing down below. I greatly appreciate that too. We're also getting close to 3,000. And that'll do it for me. I will see you guys in the next video.